Before dancehall ruled the 90s, before two-tone turned British youth black and white and restless, before the mainstream learned to hear patois on pop radio, there was Desmond Dekker and the Aces. They didn't just make songs, they rewired how the world hears Jamaica. But behind the legend is a story of hustle, borders, and a partnership that ended too soon. The kind of cost and conflict we rarely talk about. Picture this. Mid-60s Kingston. Tiny studio, big echo. A tenor slicing through the mix. A tune called 07, Shanty Town, explodes in Britain. Mods and skinheads slam dancing to a Jamaican beat the BBC barely understands. Suddenly, rude boy folklore is youth culture, and the door to the UK charts swings open. Just a crack. But here's the twist. Success arrives before the industry knows what to do with it. How do you keep your sound pure when every label wants it cleaner, smoother, more English? And what happens when your lyrics, coded in life from the yard, get misheard by the masses you've just conquered? Then comes Israelites. A song sung in the language of real life, patois, tops the UK, breaks the US top 10, and does it without translating its soul. That moment doesn't just crown a hit, it changes the rules. Suddenly, it's possible. You can stay yourself and still go global. But that crown has a weight. Behind the charts stands the quiet architect, producer Leslie Kong, and a fragile machine of visas, contracts, and overnight flights. When the machine stutters and fate intervenes, does the bridge between Kingston and London hold, or does it fall with the man who helped build it? Here's why this matters. Without Dekker's breakthrough, there's no easy runway for the Trojan era, no blueprint for the two-tone revival, maybe no confidence for later artists to bring their full voice, accent, and all to global radio. He made the world meet Jamaica halfway. So what did it take to get there? What did it cost? In sound, in friendships, in ownership? And why do we know the anthems, but not the battle to make them heard? Tonight, we follow the paper trail and the bass line, from a corner of West Kingston to the heart of London's charts, and the phone call that changed everything. Because before the movement had a map, Desmond Dekker and the Aces drew the first lines, and then paid the price for drawing them too well. Roll back the fader. Chapter 1. Kingston Roots, Beverly's Sound. How a small studio, a sharp pen, and a fearless tenor lit the fuse. In 1962 to 1966, Kingston, the radio felt safe. Imported pop from London. Calypso and mento at dinnertime. Early ska on weekend shows. Bright, brassy, polite enough for families. But behind closed doors, West Kingston was living a different tempo. New independence, not enough jobs, yard life stacked tight. Sound systems battling on dusty corners till sunrise. The music that moved people wasn't coming from a boardroom. It was coming from zinc fence yards, church choirs, and a handful of tiny studios where tape hiss and hot air met raw nerve. Hold that sound in your head. Now add the pressure cooker. Jamaica had just stepped into independence in 1962. Hope was high, money was not. Young men drifted between day work and night dances. Politics sharpened, neighborhoods split. The rude boy image rose, part fashion, part survival. In that heat, ska's racing beat felt like a proud sprint, but sprinting forever is hard. Musicians started to slow the rhythm, drop the horn chatter, let the bass and guitar breathe. The groove thickened into something more human. Rocksteady. Fewer notes, bigger feeling, more room for a story. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. Before the stage lights, Desmond Dekker's, the voice we'd call Desmond Dekker, was a workaday Kingston youth, clocking time as an apprentice welder and singing wherever a voice could echo. He tried the big doors first. Auditions at the top studios, no bites. The gatekeepers weren't sure. Too lean, too church pure, too Jamaica in the phrasing. But that clean tenor wouldn't quit. He kept writing, kept walking, kept knocking. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, a Chinese-Jamaican family ran a small record shop and ice cream parlor called Beverly's. Behind the counter stood Leslie Kong, a calm, meticulous ear. He loved songs that told truths in plain language, sung with purpose. When Dekker walked into Beverly's and opened his mouth, Kong heard more than a voice. He heard a narrator, someone who could carry the everyday news, love, work, faith, trouble, in a way that cut through tin radios and dance hall noise. They didn't fall out of a label meeting. They were built in church basements, yard rehearsals, and tight studio hours. Dekker had melody and message. Kong had a minimalist method. Clean rhythm guitar, a bass line you could walk to, drums that clicked like a heartbeat, and space, always space, for the voice to lead. Early sessions gave us moral songs with a backbone. Respect your parents. Work hard. Mind the line between swagger and sin. Not Sunday school soft, honest. These weren't posters on a wall. They were rules learned the hard way in shanty towns and workshops. Hold that sound. Now add the aces. Harmony wasn't decoration, it was scaffolding. Those voices behind Dekker, tight thirds and fifths, quick replies, little rhythmic pushes, turned his lines into call and response with the street. The aces gave the choruses weight, the verses momentum, and the whole thing a communal feel, like the lane itself was singing back. Suddenly, you had a small choir wrapped around a tenor built for truth-telling. Here's where the world right before them matters. Ska was cooling into rocksteady. Musicians were stripping the music to essentials. Guitar on the offbeat, chop, chop, chop. Bass stepping forward with melody. Drums laying a steady floor. Beverly's sound fit that shift perfectly. Kong kept the mixes dry and direct. Dekker's patois sat up front, clear as a headline. The songs didn't apologize for being Jamaican. They announced it. And as the rude boy myth grew, Dekker didn't preach down. He narrated, warned, winked, and sometimes pleaded. The music became a mirror, sharp enough to flatter, honest enough to sting. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, big sound systems, Sir Coxsone, Duke Reed, still ran the nightlife. A tune had to survive those speakers to matter. Beverly's records did. The ingredients were simple and lethal. A voice that cut, harmonies that held, lyrics that walked the lane, a rhythm section that left room for breath. If the dance floor leaned in, you had a chance. If it didn't, there was no plan B. Hold that sound in your head. Now add influence. Dekker grew up with church discipline and yard slang, American R&B on the breeze, and Jamaican folk phrasing that bent vowels like wire. He learned the trick of saying serious things with a smile in the melody. That's how you tell hard truths on daytime radio. Kong, for his part, studied what traveled. Crisp intros, no wasted bars, hooks you could hum after one chorus. Together they forged songs that felt both local and export-ready, without sanding off the accent or the attitude. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. The DIY grind came before the passport stamps. Countless rehearsals, recuts, and B-sides led to the moment the door cracked open. A small studio, a trusted engineer, the aces at the mic. Dekker in the middle, jaw set, breath steady. Kong at the board. Ears narrowed to the syllable. They weren't chasing London yet. They were trying to get the lane right, the feel of a place and a people, captured so clean that it could cross the sea without translation. Why it matters. By the time anyone outside Jamaica knew the name, the parts were already dangerous. The Dekker pipeline had learned how to turn yard stories into compact 2-minute records that stood up on British radios and Jamaican speaker boxes alike. That pipeline would become one of the first reliable bridges from Kingston to the UK charts. It proved a simple, radical point. You could keep your language, keep your rhythm, keep your truth, and still be heard far away. Before we race to the hits, sit with this thought. When a new sound breaks a border, who decides what gets carried across? The artist, the producer, or the market waiting on the other side? Up next, we test that question in real time as a tune named for a British secret agent number walks straight out of Shanty Town and into the charts. After months of knocking on doors, it happens in a small room with big echo. Desmond Dekker steps to the mic. The Aces lock their harmonies. Leslie Kong keeps the arrangement lean, guitar chop, bass step, heartbeat drums. They cut a tune that sounds like a street rumor set to rhythm. Title, 007, Shanty Town. After that take, the room tilted. The first time they played it back, people stopped talking. It didn't sound like a new act. It sounded like a weapon. How they collide. The path is half chance, half choice. Dekker's clean tenor and yard-level storytelling meet Kong's Keep It Plain production at Beverly's. The Aces become the scaffold. Tight thirds, quick replies, choruses that feel like the lane singing back. It's not studio accident, it's alignment. A singer built for truth, a producer allergic to clutter, a harmony group that turns testimony into an anthem. First shockwave, word spreads from sound system to shop counter. Then the jump, summer 1967, British radios start spinning over 7, Shanty Town. Within weeks, the single punches up to UK the Rewired 14, a breakthrough not just for Dekker, but for Jamaican-produced music itself, the first of its kind to crack the UK top 20. The message is loud. This isn't a novelty. Jamaica can compete in Britain on its own terms. Freeze the frame, listen to the hook one more time. The chorus is a warning and a wink. The verses a dispatch from the lane. No translation, no sanding off the patois. Kong leaves space so the syllables punch through small speakers and big halls. The Aces lean in like witnesses. Breakout sequence. Once 007 sticks, the circuit lights up. Youth clubs, dance nights, pirate radio. Legitimate radio. Mods in sharp suits move from blue beat curiosity to rocksteady devotion. Early skinheads, working-class kids chasing bass lines and style, adopt rude boy rhythm as their soundtrack. A Jamaican street tale becomes a British youth anthem, bridging 2 islands by groove alone. Numbers don't tell it. This clip does. Picture a weeknight in '67. Sweat fog on the ceiling, steel-toe boots scuffing the floor, a room full of kids hitting the offbeat with their shoulders. When Dekker's tenor cuts in, light but unyielding, the dancers answer back. That call and response is the uptake every foreign act dreams of. The crowd finishes your lines like they were born there. And then the backlash landed. The papers can't decide what this is. Too street for polite pop. Too Jamaican for proper radio. Too rude boy for editors who hear threat where the kids hear release. Critics ask if it's a fad. Programmers hedge. But the youth don't need permission. The single keeps selling. The request lines stay busy. 007, Shanty Town, proves a border can be crossed without changing your passport. Freeze the frame again. What made it different wasn't volume or speed. It was stance. Dekker sings like a reporter with skin in the story. The Aces answer like the block talking back. Kong frames it so nothing gets lost. In 3 minutes you get plot, cast, conflict, and a chorus you can chant on a bus. The liftoff. With one record, Dekker and the Aces show labels and promoters there's money and meaning down this lane. It opens the door for the next singles, the next signings, the next imports, from a tiny Kingston shop to British charts. The pipeline is real now, not theory. Kids hear the future, some critics hear a problem. But the scoreboard's simple. Britain just let a Jamaican-produced street parable into its top 20. That's not an accident. That's demand. Push to Chapter 3. If 007 could tilt a room and crack a country, what happens when the same team writes a song that doesn't slow down for anyone, that keeps its patois, its pressure, and aims straight at the summit? Next, a record called Israelites turns a local voice into a global language and forces radio to change its ears. They weren't just selling music, they were selling permission. When Israelites hit in 1969, Desmond Dekker and the Aces gave kids a uniform and a stance. Sharp trousers, clean shirts, boots that could take a night of dancing, and an attitude that said, "I belong to this rhythm." Parents heard trouble in the slang and the patois. Kids heard a mirror. Finally, a voice that sounded like real life on the radio. Freeze the frame. Listen to the hook one more time. Get up in the morning, slaving for bread, sir. The opening line is a whole movie in 10 words. Alarm clock, bus stop, empty pockets, pride intact. Dekker delivers it like a report. Tenor bright, phrasing clipped, vowels bent by yard talk. You don't need a dictionary. You need empathy. That's why it traveled. Even if you missed a word, you felt the pressure and the dignity. Myth engine, image, rumor, permission. Israelites wasn't dangerous because it was loud. It was dangerous because it was plain. No coded metaphors, no polished accent. The Aces' harmonies stood like a small crowd behind him. Calm, unshakable. The look matched the sound. Tidy but hard-wearing, clean lines with worker roots. For British youth scenes, mods turning leaner, early skinheads getting bass-drunk, this was a code you could wear. Some editors called it delinquent. Kids called it real. Culture shock. What changed? Stations that once tucked Jamaican music into late-night corners had to move it into daytime. Record shops that used to file this sound under specialty cleared front-row space. Dance floors changed shape. Stiff top halves, heavy feet, shoulders hitting the offbeat. Even the way people sang along shifted. Call and response. Little harmony tails, yeah-yeahs that felt communal. The song didn't just sell records, it reset the format for what a pop voice could be. Solo the rhythm guitar, hear what it's doing under the vocal. That clean offbeat chop is a metronome for the hips. It's not flashy, it's consistent, almost meditative, leaving pockets of air so the story can breathe. On top, a bass line that walks like a character. Step, step, hold. Then a small climb that feels like hope. Drums are tight and unfussy. Kick and rim shots holding the line. Hi-hat whispering time rather than shouting it. Nothing crowds the singer. Craft breakdown. Why it still hits. Vocal character. Dekker's tenor is light but iron-backed. He never oversins. The power is in restraint. Each phrase lands like a sentence you can't argue with. Lyric voice, everyday drama, work, bills, authority, pride, told without self-pity. The patois is musical, percussive. Consonants click, vowels glide. Harmony logic, the aces. Not syrup, structure. They answer lines, underline keywords, and lift choruses by a third like a lever under the melody. Bass logic, melodic but disciplined. It sketches the chord changes and then repeats a simple motif you can hum on your way to work. Drum feel, dancer first. Slight lean behind the beat, giving the groove a human sway. You feel grounded, not rushed. Guitar and piano. The offbeat chop and sparse piano stabs act like punctuation. Periods and commas in the story. Producer-engineer choices, the secret weapon. The mix is dry, present, and small speaker friendly. Vocals sit high, rhythm tucked tight beneath. No reverb haze to blur the words. You hear the singer's breath. The pick on the string, the stick on the rim. It's intimate, like somebody telling you news across the kitchen table. One studio trick you can't unhear after this. Listen to how the intro arrives fully formed. No long count-off, no indulgent bars. You're in the scene by the first syllable. That ruthless focus is why it works on radio. The hook is the verse, and the verse is the headline. Every second earns its keep. Controversy. The papers heard a problem. Some critics called it too street, too hard to understand, a fad. They missed the point. The hard-to-understand part was the point. Israelites set a precedent. You don't have to flatten your voice to be heard globally. For youth who felt locked out of polite pop, the song was permission. Be yourself, and let the world come to you. And that's why copycats never quite felt right. Imitators grabbed the offbeat guitar and a patois accent, but they missed the moral spine. Dekker's songs carry responsibility. Warnings, work ethic, community rules, wrapped in melody. Take out that center, and you've got style without substance. Each member is essential. Pull one out, the machine stumbles. Remove Dekker's tenor, and the lines lose their authority. A heavier voice would turn testimony into sermon. Remove the aces, and the call loses its answer. Choruses don't bloom, they just pass. Remove the rhythm section's restraint, and the story drowns in clutter. Remove the producer's discipline, and the track turns into a nightclub fog instead of a bulletin. Numbers don't tell it. This moment does. Picture a bus stop in any city, 1969. Someone hums, "Get up in the morning," and strangers finish the line. That's when a song leaves the chart and enters the language. You can ban slang on radio, you can't ban what people sing at work. Mid-game pivot, what Israelites unlocked. With one global hit, gates moved, radio programmers adjusted their ears, shop buyers widened their orders, festival bookers did the math. And back in Kingston, artists took note. You can keep your tone, your talk, your tempo, and still cross the water. But a hit this big changes the room you walk into. Offers get sweeter, contracts get trickier, schedules get cruel. The team that built the bridge now has to live on it. So what do you do next? Double down on message or soften for the middle? And what happens when the quiet architect in the control room isn't there to steady the ship? Next, crossover momentum and the cost of success, from it mech to you can get it if you really want, and the turning point nobody saw coming. Success looks simple on a poster: title, date, sold-out stamp. But the math behind it is ugly. After Israelites, the calendar filled up. Early flights, 2 shows in one day, interviews squeezed between customs and soundcheck. Labels wanted more singles, faster. Promoters wanted longer sets, louder rooms. And the very thing that made Desmond Dekker and the Aces special, clarity, restraint, moral weight, was the thing the machine kept trying to stretch. We're going to sit with this for a second. Touring miles eat voices. Studio deadlines dull instincts. The offbeat chop that once felt like fresh air now had to compete with bigger drums, brighter amps, wider rooms. You hold the line as long as you can. Grind math. In 1969, the follow-up arrives. Itmec, same spine, clean rhythm, stern smile, only now the demand is global. The record climbs the British charts. Radio keeps calling. Then, 1970. You can get it if you really want. A slogan and a sermon at once, written by Jimmy Cliff, sung by Dekker like a promise he intends to keep. The message is optimism with calluses. Yet each triumph comes with a new ask. A second TV appearance, a third encore, a fourth rewrite of the same press story. You're not just selling records anymore. You're selling availability. Listen to how the tempo feels heavier now. Aces' harmonies still lift the choruses, but travel has a price. You can hear the fatigue around the edges of certain shows. Still tight, still true, but running on smaller hours of sleep. The label math never pauses. If one single cracks a door, make 3 more that fit the hinge. Human hits. Middle-distance problems turn into close-range ones. Visa headaches. Contract sawdust. Family life stretched thin across oceans. In a music scene that changes every 6 months, the anxiety is constant. Hold your ground, or bend to the market. That's the debate behind closed doors, and there's no rehearsal for it. This is the part fans don't put on T-shirts. In the control room sits the quiet architect, Leslie Kong. He kept the sound lean, the takes honest, the pacing wise. When an arrangement meandered, he cut it. When a word blurred, he asked for another pass. He protected the space, that precious pocket where Dekker's tenor could speak plainly, and the Aces could brace the roof. Then, 1971 lands like a dropped stage light. Leslie Kong dies, suddenly. It doesn't just bruise the team, it changes the chemistry. The bridge that carried these songs from Kingston to London loses a pillar. You can replace gear, book new studios, hire new ears. You cannot replace the person who knew when to say, "Leave it, that's the take." We're going to sit with this for a second. Without Kong, the room sounds different, even when the microphones are the same. New producers admire the catalog, but don't share the monk-like discipline. Some push for more polish, some for bigger backbeats, some for crossover sheen. Each choice makes sense on paper. None of them feel like Beverly's, that dry, truthful frame that carried patois into the daytime. Creative stalemates. You can hear them trying roots. Keep the messages bright. Keep the grooves steady. Keep the vocals forward. The singles chart. The stages fill. But the friction grows. Jamaica is shifting toward roots, dub, heavier bass imaginations. London's youth find new tribes and new speeds. Dekker keeps his code, work ethic, dignity, melody, yet the ground beneath him is moving. Listen to the air between the notes. That roomy, humane pocket we praised in Chapter 3 becomes harder to find under stadium lights and in changing studios. The Aces still lock tight, but lineups change, side players rotate, schedules turn friends into colleagues, and colleagues into strangers. There isn't a single fight that breaks the spell. No smashed guitar, no tabloid brawl. It's accumulation. Miles, asks, absences, industry knives, contracts from multiple territories, royalties that require a lawyer to translate, promises that evaporate once a trend shifts. The press that once called the sound the future now calls it yesterday, and then asks for a quote about influence. Influence doesn't pay hotel bills. Listen to how the tempo feels heavier now. On stage, Dekker still delivers like a craftsman who respects the ticket. Offstage, decisions get sharper. Do you chase radio's new compression? Do you sand the consonants? Do you hire the big room drummer who hits 2 decibels harder but leaves less space for the story? Every yes steals a little oxygen. Every no risks a smaller stage. The end, not a fade, a turn. For some bands, the fall is a tabloid detonation. For Dekker and the Aces, it's something more adult and less cinematic. A turn from a once-in-a-generation producer's guardianship into a world that treats past success as leverage for new compromises. Without Kong, it isn't not real, but it isn't the same machine. The pipeline still exists. The template is proven. But the fuel mix has changed. Sessions continue. Tours continue. But the run, the immaculate line from yard truth to chart truth, ends with the man who kept the door square to the hinge. We're going to sit with this for a second. Behind the posters was a price tag. Sleep, blood, sanity. The incident wasn't one scandal. It was a loss of the producer who heard the song inside the noise, and that loss echoed through every practical part of the job. If this is where the clean arc breaks, what survives? Do the songs keep their passport when fashions change? Do new movements, Trojan compilations, UK ska revivals, later global pop that keeps its own accent, carry pieces of this craft forward? In the final chapter, we follow the afterlife of a sound. How Desmond Dekker and the Aces didn't just top charts. They taught music how to travel without losing its mother tongue. Before Desmond Dekker and the Aces, British youth culture heard Jamaica as weekend color. Good for a party, separate from the real charts. After them, everyone chased the stance. Tight clothes, tighter grooves, stories sung plain. Even artists who never learned the names are living in the echo. Influence map. Start in London. The late 60s skinhead reggae crowd didn't just copy a beat, they copied a way to move. Shoulders on the offbeat, boots planted to the bass line, choir shout choruses you can bark on a bus. That posture gets passed down to two-tone in late 70s Britain. Bands like The Specials, Madness, and The Selector build their whole mission on the idea that Jamaican rhythm and British street life can share the same mic. Dekker proved that radio would meet patois halfway. Those bands sprinted through the door. Cross the Atlantic, and you hear his lesson in punk and post-punk. Brevity, message, motion. Keep the verses lean. Put the hook to work. Leave space for the truth to land. Spot the lineage. Hear a modern act cut the instruments so the voice carries the room? That's the Beverly's blueprint. Less reverb, more message. The afterlife. When the Trojan era got boxed and reissued, Dekker's records turned into starter kits for new generations. Compact craft lessons disguised as hits. The Harder They Come soundtrack keeps 007, Shanty Town, alive on turntables and in dorm rooms for decades, introducing new listeners to a voice that doesn't slow down for anyone. Tribute nights in London and Kingston still pull his anthems into the present. 07. Itmec. You can get it if you really want. And every time a DJ cuts the intro cold, the room answers like it's 1969. One reference you've felt 1,000 times. That first-line headline writing, "Get up in the morning," became a pop habit. Start with the scene, no throat clearing. You've heard it in singer-songwriters, in dancehall intros, in indie hooks that sound like a text message. That cadence is part of the language now. Why now? A 2025 listener hears something a 1980 listener might have missed. Permission. The idea that you can keep your accent, keep your neighborhood, keep your tempo, and still go global. In an era when voices from everywhere show up on the same playlist, Dekker's achievement isn't just historical. It's a working method. Artists from Lagos to London to Kingston still win with the same rules. Clean arrangement, conversational lyric, moral center, hook that starts on bar 1. Solo the rhythm guitar for a second. Hear that juddering offbeat? Producers still carve that space into Afrobeats, alt-pop, and singer-songwriter tracks when they want bodies to move without flooding the mix. That's why copycats never feel quite right if they add clutter. The secret is the room to breathe. How to start listening today. Gateway map. If you want the headline hit, start with Israelites. Hear how the melody carries with or without perfect comprehension. For the Rude Boys Cinema, 007, Shanty Town. This is the voice of the lane, short, sharp, unforgettable. For the craft mantra, it mech. Lean groove, stern smile, tiny details that stick. For the anthem of resolve, you can get it if you really want. Optimism with calluses. Sing it on bad weather mornings. Then, drop the needle on any Trojan or Beverly's compilations and listen forward into two-tone. You'll hear the family resemblance immediately. Numbers don't tell it. This does. Put Israelites next to a current stripped-down hit. Feel how both records trust the voice more than the furniture around it. That's the handoff across time. Personal close. They weren't just selling music. They were selling permission. Dekker gave kids a uniform and adults a conversation. But when you strip the tabloids away, the secret weapon is the discipline. The choir stack on the chorus, the one-note guitar chop, the bass line that walks like a man late for work. The producer who refuses to waste 1 second of your attention. Pull any piece out. The tenor, the aces, the rhythm's restraint, the producer's editing, and the machine stumbles. If you were there, you already knew. If you weren't, now you do. Your turn. What was the first Desmond Dekker track that hit you in the chest? Or which era should we deep dive next? The Trojan explosion or the two-tone revival? Drop your pick. The best comments go into our pinned playlist, so new listeners can start right. This is Reggae. Subscribe, so this history doesn't get erased by the algorithm, and hit the next episode where we trace how a tiny record shop and an unshakable producer taught the UK to hear Jamaica, and how that blueprint later powered a black-and-white suited youthquake called Two Tone.